Incidents like last night set us back as a city, and it evokes fear. Our young people have to understand that they should not attend these unauthorized events that have been advertised on social media.
It's Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson after a deadly couple of shootings, leaving scores of people injured and one dead. Investigation continues. It is Illinois in Focus Daily with you each and every weekday morning. I'm Greg Bishop, and you've got Chicago violence and the state's end of cash bail coming into clear detail as we continue to look at what happened over the weekend, where early weekend violence erupted as you had revelers taking in the holiday spirit. Here's just some of what that looked like Friday in Chicago. This was during the Christmas tree lighting ceremony at Millennium Park, and you can see tons of people out there. Beautiful evening. Oh my gosh, couldn't ask for better conditions in Chicago Friday night for that tree lighting ceremony. People obviously having a good time, listening to music, watching the tree get on display. But violence eventually broke out Friday, where you have the reports coming in. They anticipated potential disruptions due to social media posts warning about some so-called teen takeovers. That's large unsupervised gatherings of young people, and there were 2 shootings that ended up breaking out. 7 wounded, all teenagers in the first shooting. The second shooting happened about an hour later at about 10:40, where a 14-year-old was shot and killed multiple times. You've got an 18-year-old that was injured in the leg, and clearly this happening after a seemingly successful holiday gathering downtown. You have the concerns being raised about public safety in Chicago. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson had this to say.
Incidents like last night set us back as a city, and it evokes fear. Our young people have to understand that they should not attend these unauthorized events that have been advertised on social media. They are extremely dangerous due to the number of individuals that may be carrying weapons, and as much progress as we have made, there are still far too many guns on our streets. For these young people who have engaged in these incidents, you have put yourselves and your friends at risk. Because of the reckless behavior of a few individuals, we have families devastated, and our downtown residents are hesitant to leave their own homes. I'm the first person to recognize that we have more work to do in this city to provide safe spaces for our young people. But these type of violent gatherings can never be an alternative, nor can they be normalized. We need parents, guardians, and other responsible adults to do their best to accompany young people in large, unsanctioned gatherings where weapons are likely to be present. There's always more we as adults can do to make sure that we know where our kids are and what they are doing. I recognize this feels like emotional whiplash. After this incredible celebration last night where thousands of people gathered, Chicagoans who were enjoying our tree lighting ceremony expressed their love for our city. It was peaceful. It was a joyous evening, a vision of the best of Chicago. The holiday season is a time when we come together as a city. It's when we spend time with our families and our loved ones. This is the opposite type of behavior that anybody wants to see. And road that we have to build the city that we all want to live in. We will continue to pray for the victims and their families. We will continue to pray for our city. This is an ongoing investigation, and we'll provide the updates as we have them.
The mayor laying out that obviously the city of Chicago is praying for the family as they work through a pretty tough time of that 14-year-old that was killed. President Donald Trump seeing this in the headlines, posting onto Truth Social, massive crime and rioting in the Chicago Loop area. Multiple police officers attacked and badly injured. There are reports of police, hundreds of police being on the streets during this time because, again, they brought more police onto the scene after they got indication of a social media promotion to gather people together. But Trump goes on to say 300 people rioting, 6 victims shot, 1 critical, and 1 dead. In the meantime, Governor Pritzker and the low IQ mayor of Chicago are refusing federal government help for a situation that could be quickly remedied. The people are chanting, "Bring in Trump." And you have seen in the past, as we've covered here with Illinois in Focus, the ongoing conversation that some in Chicago have of bringing in Trump, bringing in more feds, bringing in even the National Guard. That entire situation is being tied up in the courts as you've got the efforts of the Trump administration to try to use the Guard to assist in enforcement of federal immigration law to keep assets of the federal government, property and personnel, safe as they conduct federal immigration enforcement. Still a lot of things to do with that, and that story's pages keep turning. So we'll obviously stay there. But the issue of public safety in Chicago, obviously after Friday, and the deadly shooting, two separate shootings, teenagers across the board injured there. Earlier, you had another individual who went to the CTA line and lit it on fire, including one individual that is in critical condition, last I saw reports. And this has led to questions even for Governor J.B. Pritzker about the Safety Act and no cash bail, because the suspect in this case that was arrested for lighting somebody on fire inside public transportation in Chicago had dozens of previous arrests. I've seen 40, I've seen 70, I've seen it reported multiple times, but clearly that was a individual who had been arrested before in the past but had been released. Governor J.B. Pritzker being asked about this on Friday, and if there's room to change the state's no cash bail policies.
The Safety Act is designed to give judges the ability to keep people in jail who they think are potentially dangerous for the community. So it is the judgment of those elected judges that ultimately determines, in most cases, whether somebody is released or not. And it's a better way, by the way, than bail. Because bail is sort of an automatic out for people who just happen to have enough money, and an automatic incarceration for somebody who happens not to have enough money. Rather use judgment, good judgment, in most cases, to keep violent criminals or people who have mental health problems. And it's my understanding, at least all the reading that I've done, I don't know more than that, that this person seems to have had some serious mental health challenges. And so that's another aspect of what I think judges need to take into consideration. I want to make sure that we are providing the kind of mental health that should be available to people who need it, and especially somebody who has the potential for, or who has in the past committed some violence. Yes.
Prosecutors we're talking to are saying that there are problems, and they give some examples. For example, a convicted murderer, these are real life cases, convicted murderer who served his sentence and parole, and then randomly punching a woman in the face at Michigan Avenue.
The reporter, if you can't hear, is asking a question about some cases where a convicted murderer was ultimately released, even though he served his time previously, but was released on a separate charge and ended up punching somebody in the face, and prosecutors are saying there's big problems.
Of course, if there are changes that need to be, look, we do this all the time in Springfield, right? Where there are laws that have been on the books for 20 years that need tweaking because there's something that somebody missed in the original, writing of it. And so always willing to look at that. I can't speak to the specifics of that case that you're raising, but just to say, of course, and I've said this about the Safety Act before, and about really every bill that gets passed in Springfield. Sometimes bills get passed and everybody that votes for it knows that there needs to be a trailer bill or a tweak that needs to be made afterward. So I think everybody is open to listening to what changes might need to be made.
So the governor taking those questions Friday, but that was in reference to the CTA attack of a person on the train being lit on fire by somebody who had dozens of previous arrests and was let go, and Illinois being the first state to end cash bail. Now, the end of cash bail has been criticized by Republicans in the state of Illinois. They've called for it to be completely reversed and for cash bail to be reimposed. They say that if it's going to stay in place, they need to broaden the detention net, the list of offenses that automatically keep somebody behind bars pending trial. You have a right to a speedy trial in the U.S. So, can you be held behind bars to get that speedy trial? So, you've got Republicans saying either end it or modify it. And even President Donald Trump has sounded off on Illinois' no cash bail. Got to check on where they're at with their review of jurisdictions that have ended cash bail. and what kind of financial resources federal taxpayers could withhold from the state of Illinois for having no cash bail. But Governor J.B. Pritzker obviously defending it, saying that there can be tweaks. But we've seen this brought up where Republicans say they have the tweaks, but Democrats who are in control of the legislature aren't allowing for those tweaks to even be discussed in committee. So is this going to change things, right? The violence that happened on the CTA train with somebody being lit on fire, the accused individual there being charged with terrorism, and also having dozens of prior arrests, to what happened Friday in Chicago around the holiday tree lighting party, and 2 separate shootings, one 14-year-old dead, scores of other teenagers shot and injured. Governor J.B. Pritzker saying, yeah, the perception about public safety in Chicago, these I guess he's indicating it's an isolated incident, kind of like Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson said the CTA train fire was an isolated incident, and Pritzker says that Chicago's safe. I need to double check the audio there. I'm seeing that it's not necessarily coming through as maybe it should. Let me change the channel here on that so that you guys could hear it better. Apologize, this is live to tape as we go live each and every weekday morning to get you the latest here. So let's see if we can better hear Governor J.B. Pritzker's response to the issue of the perception of public safety in the city of Chicago after these high-profile and alarming incidents.
Look, wherever there is a horrible crime that is committed, and they happen all over the country, it doesn't show a positive light on wherever it is that crime occurred. Chicago, because the President of the United States regularly stands up and attacks the city of Chicago and says that it's on fire, and that every neighborhood and every community of Chicago is a dangerous place to be. When he does that, anytime there is a crime, and especially one that's this horrific, it tends to get amplified because of his words. I don't diminish what happened on the Blue Line in any way when I say that crime is down in the city and the state. What I am saying is truthful. It is also true that any crime that occurs, and especially one like this, is one that we ought to be going after, that we ought to be investigating, and we ought to holding people accountable for.
So again, the governor saying that one high-profile crime doesn't mean that all places in Chicago are dangerous. But that was Friday when he made the comments, and then later in the day on Friday, a place where you figure would be safe with hundreds of police officers, revelers celebrating the holiday season would be safe, but there were 2 separate shootings and a slew of teenagers shot, 1 killed, and again, a very public place that you would have thought would have been safe. We'll see how the rest of the state reacts to this. The March primary, 4 months away? Less than that? You're going to be able to go to the polling booth here in Illinois and choose either a Democrat or a Republican ballot and select who you want to be your party's nominee for the November general midterm election. And one of the races up for grabs is Illinois governor. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Each and every weekday morning, we break things down for you so you can get on with your day. Go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, and get the latest headlines in your inbox. But again, wake up with us here, subscribe to the YouTube channel, watch the clips, or you can get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. So we've got a field of candidates for the Republicans as they continue for the next few days here to respond to objections to their nominating petitions. You've got candidates that have been pretty elevated already, including Darren Bailey. He's a Republican who ran against Governor J.B. Pritzker back in 2022. Bailey also tragically lost his son, daughter-in-law, and 2 of 3 grandchildren from that family in a helicopter crash. And that happening just last month, or was it earlier this month? But family still mourning that and grieving from that. So we have yet to hear from Bailey. He has stayed in the race, but we're looking to set up a time where we can discuss the issues with the potential candidates. So he's running again. You've also got Jim Mendrick, who announced earlier this year, and he's the DuPage County Sheriff, that he's going to challenge Governor J.B. Pritzker. His petitions are in. You've got a businessman and several others, but somebody we talked with recently, Ted Dabrowski. Here's a conversation I had with him on a range of issues, and one of them obviously being an explanation of who exactly is Ted Dabrowski. Here's the candidates in a conversation I had with him late last week.
Yeah, so my name is Ted Dabrowski, and I'm running for governor of Illinois. And for the last 15 years, I've been fighting for change here in Illinois, trying to reform our state, trying to make it a growth state again. I believe it should be a top 5 state. We should be one of the most competitive, fastest growing states. We should be competing with North Carolina, with Tennessee, with Texas, with Florida. We have all the resources. We have, the land, the Chicago, the infrastructure, the lake. We have all these great things, and yet we're a bottom 5 state. And I'm running because I believe we can make this state a great state again. I think we're ready to go.
And one of the questions I have, I'm going to be asking all the candidates, is how do you distinguish yourself from other Republican candidates in the field for the March primary?
I'm certainly an outsider. I'm not an insider, so that makes me a little bit different. But I have been over the last 15 years working on public policy. I've traveled across the state extensively. I've worked with grassroots groups. I've worked with legislators. I've worked on legislation. I've testified in committees. So as I've said, I know how the sausage is made, and I know why it tastes so bad. We need to have big changes in that. But I also have an executive background. I worked over 15 years overseas, 6 years in finance in Mexico, 9 years in Poland. And so I bring a lot of executive experience in working with all kinds of people, having to perform, having to grow businesses. And I was so lucky to work in Poland, which was a state that I did a country, which was where I did my small part to bring that country out of the depths it was in communism and in the rubbles, and now it's one of the top performing countries in the world. And so that's part of my background. And of course, I talk a lot about my immigrant background. Both of my parents were immigrants here. My mom from Ecuador when she was a 19-year-old. And my father escaped from communist Poland, and they both came to Illinois. They both came to Chicago to live their American dream. What's fascinating and what I take away from both of them was that both of them escaped failed governments. Poland obviously was a failed government for all its reasons, but Ecuador too, a lot of poverty. So my parents escaped failed governments, and here we are now. People are leaving in droves our very own state because it's a failed government. And so I want to turn that around. This is an amazing state.
Now, I did ask specifically to distinguish himself from like Darren Bailey or Jim Mendrick or others that are in the field. And here's Ted Dabrowski, Republican candidate for governor.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've got a record. I've got a 15-year record. I've written about, both at the Illinois Policy Institute and at WirePoints, I've written, researched, and worked on changes to taxation. I've worked on changes to pensions, to budgeting. I've exposed lots of things. If there's one person who can kind of claim some kind of Doge type, exposure of failure, exposure of bad spending, bad policy, I've been doing that for a long time. So that's one. I know where the problems are, and that means I know how to fix them. I know what to roll back. That's one. Two, I've got the executive experience, which is much broader than they have. And so that I think lends a lot to it. I'm also from Cook County. I'm a common sense conservative from up here. I know how to operate in this environment, Cook County, the suburbs, which is key to winning. I think Bailey last time showed that And I supported Bailey last time, but he showed that he couldn't win up here in the suburbs in Cook County. He lost by 35 percentage points up here, so that's a big difference as well.
So something else I asked Dabrowski was about the press and possibly facing a hostile press that may actually secretly support the Democrats and come after Dabrowski pretty hard on some issues. How does he plan to deal with
that? The amazing thing about a really hostile press is they don't know what to do when I show them the truth. When we talk about, let's talk about education, and I often talk about the reading numbers. A place like Decatur, Illinois, just 2% of third grade black children can read at grade level. The press never acknowledges that. But, with a governor like me, they wouldn't be able to ignore it because, one, I will put it front and center. We need to focus on literacy. We need to obsess about literacy, and we need to champion those black children in Decatur public schools who can't read. And right now, Governor Pritzker doesn't champion them. The press doesn't champion them. They actually deny the facts. So I will work with them on that. If we talk about crime, Chicago has led the country in murders for 13 years in a row, and this year will be number 14. They don't want to talk about that. I will expose that because what we need to do is back our police and have really strong law and order policies to get our communities safe again. So I will go back and forth on all this. Look, I talked about my parents coming here when they came here back in 1960-ish. People were coming from all over the world. The Illinois population was growing tremendously. When they came. Everybody's coming for the American dream. Today, if you look at the last census, 2010 to 2020, there are only 3 states that shrunk in this country. It was Mississippi, West Virginia, and Illinois. What does the press want to do with those facts? Celebrate them? And I don't mean to belittle the other 2 states, but why are we in that group? Why are we not in the growing group? Why aren't we in the group that's growing our economy, growing population, growing wages? Because right now we're not, and the hostile press will have to take me on, but the facts are on my side, the truth is on my side, and the moral truth is on my side as well.
Now, Dabrowski had mentioned this earlier, but how do you get through in Chicago? How do you break through in the suburbs? This is a big area.
It's I have a little bit of an advantage too because I'm from Cook County and I've been here, and my running mate, Dr. Carrie Mendoza, who's an ER doctor here and lives in Cook County as well. We both are from up here. I think we'll be accepted more having been from up here. There's another part that I think is important. Is I'm half Polish, half Hispanic, so I will go out and try to talk to that community, both communities, and gain their support. I think there's plenty of people who are disenfranchised with Governor Pritzker, and so that's another opportunity for me. But remember, we don't have to win Cook County in the suburbs, right? We have to do well enough because a Republican will do really well in all the other counties. It's just being able to garner enough votes. And I'll tell you the way I think we win right now is that if you look at Governor Pritzker, his policies are so extreme now, and Democrats are so extreme, and we see it across the board. We've seen it with boys and girls sports, teaching transgenderism in the 4th grade. We've got the funding of over $2 billion for healthcare for illegal immigrants. It just goes on and on. We're putting mental health screening in our public schools. Doesn't belong there. So there's so many things that have become extreme, and Pritzker owns all those. He's championing all those, and I think there will be many people. You've seen the black community be very disenfranchised by the illegal immigration. You've seen a lot of the Hispanics disenfranchised by all the DEI in schools. You've got parents in the suburbs who hate losing their parental control over their children, whether it's for health or school issues. So I think there's enough people who said, Governor Pritzker's had, nearly 7 years to fix things. He hasn't. He's only made things worse. He's done nothing about property taxes. We're not growing jobs, and our kids can't read in schools. It's not working. So I think people are awake and looking for other things.
That's, again, Ted Dabrowski. He's a Republican candidate running for Illinois governor, and he talked about some of the minority groups in Chicago. Well, how does he work with Chicago Flips Red, for instance?
That's the big opportunity. They know that Governor Pritzker hasn't helped. Look how strong he's been with illegal immigrants. He puts them over his own citizens, right? When you spend $2 billion on illegal immigrants, and you can love illegal immigrants all you want, but when you're spending $2 billion and ignoring your very residents, which is what the Chicago Flips Red is so upset about, is that the black community is being ignored. Pritzker prioritizes illegal immigrants over his own black community. And and it's similar when we talk about the deaths that have occurred under the hands of illegal immigrants. Joe Abraham lost his daughter to an illegal immigrant who crashed into a car his daughter was in and killed her immediately. Governor Pritzker has never, ever apologized or expressed any kind of empathy or sympathy to Joe Abraham. He's ignored him this whole time. And that's how Pritzker is. He's prioritizing illegal immigrants over his own residents.
Ted Dabrowski's running for Illinois governor as a Republican. Obviously, if he gets through the March primary, he's going to see a pretty high dollar that Pritzker's going to spend.
He's got $25 million he just put in just like that. He's a billionaire. Governor Pritzker's got lots of money, but he's got a lot of bad outcomes on his side. And we just talked about several of them. So he won't be able to defend that. Now, the question is for our side, can we elevate the issues? Can we hold him accountable for all the things he's done? I think if we can elevate our campaign, is we start to get national support as well, because Governor Pritzker is running for president. He does not care right now about running for governor. And you can see that by his positions. You can see that all he does is fight Trump. He does nothing to really do anything here to support. He hasn't lowered property taxes. He hasn't even tried. He's only raised them by his policies. So I think there's going to be enough interest from outside to help us elevate the campaign. Of course, we have to do our job and we have to make our case.
How does Ted Dabrowski, as a Republican, if he wins governor, gets through the primary and beats Pritzker in November, is he going to work with a Democratic-led General Assembly at the state legislature? How does that work? What does that look like? Again, Ted Dabrowski, part of the conversation I had with him on Friday.
I think, one, if I were to win, that would send a big signal to the legislature that people are tired of the extreme policies. I mean, that would be an immediate and obvious conclusion of that. So hopefully we would have some kind of reversion to the mean, let's call it. But I do think that when you have the highest property taxes in the country, and I tell you that's the number one issue as I go around. It doesn't matter where I go, and we even had a bonfire where people were in the west side of Chicago were burning property tax bills. That's how bad it's gotten. People are livid, and there's no way the Democrats can avoid that issue. I'll tell you another issue they can't avoid is our kids can't read. You're seeing a disaster in schools across the state where our kids can't read anymore. And so I do think there's a chance to, one, find common ground on that. But two, look, what Rauner didn't do, which is what I would do, is one, use the bully pulpit to say, hey, we've got a problem in Illinois, and you've got to connect the dots between the Democrats who are in total control, super majorities in the legislature. The problems we have in Illinois are tied to them. Connect the dots. We'd have a 4-year campaign to try to change the legislature. But then also don't forget that the governor gets to name department heads and all kinds of positions, which can also impact how we execute. And of course, last, the governor has the veto pen. You can do line item vetoes and veto a lot of the bad bills that, of course, Pritzker signed immediately. So there's a lot that can be changed. But I do think that I, as the next governor, would have to make my case to the people of Illinois that we need more change, because this is an amazing state. We should be competing with all the other states and not be a bottom 5 state.
Again, if Dabrowski was able to beat Pritzker in November, Trump would still be president. How would he work with the Trump administration in bettering the state of Illinois?
Trump has done amazing things to close the border. He's put school choice in his budget bill. He's trying to bring manufacturing back, which God knows we need manufacturing back in Illinois. He's fighting crime like no president has ever fought crime. So there's a lot to do to work with the federal administration with Trump. That said, there's a lot of things that we have to do in Illinois that have nothing to do with Trump, and that's like our property taxes. We made that mess. We have to fix it. Our second highest gas taxes. We made that mess. We have to fix it. The fact that our kids can't read in schools. We have to fix that. So we'll work with Trump where it makes sense and where he has impact, obviously, because he is our president. At the same time, I don't want people to think that, we can't think that President Trump can fix all our problems, because we're a state. We have to fix them, and it's on us to fix those things.
Some of the issues Illinoisans pay, high property taxes. How do you address that in the grand scheme of it being a local issue?
My gosh, you and I have talked a lot in the past about all the powers that our government, our Illinois legislators have given the public unions in Illinois. The public unions are the most powerful in the country, and with that comes you've got school superintendents making over, the one in Dalton making 450,000. In my own neck of the woods in the New Trier Township, we've got seven superintendents all making over 300,000. And that means massive costs, massive pensions, massive bureaucracies around each superintendent. That's another. You still have spiking. We spike contracts. The last 5 years, we automatically spike 6% each year, those salaries. And so it's boosting salaries, boosting pensions. We've got double dipping. My own previous elementary superintendent, is double dipping right now, getting a pension and earning a salary. It's fascinating. I could go through the list of the most units of government. You and I have talked about that. We have so many units of government and duplication and overlap that we're wasting tons of money. So there are many places that I've studied, I've researched, I've reported on that we must go after. And the people of Illinois have to know that if they want their property taxes lowered, we have to cut all those things.
Now, pensions drives a lot of local property taxes. I've shared how I covered the Springfield city governments and how most of their property tax share is going to pay public sector pensions. How do we address Illinois' pension liabilities? Worst in the nation, $140 billion unfunded liability. How do we address that issue? Again, Ted Dabrowski, Republican candidate for governor.
It's Warren Buffett said that he will not invest in Illinois because there's so much pension debt that he knows that taxes would be coming after him for taxes for the next 30, 40 years. It's really sad. Greg, let me give you 3 examples. I just met with a gentleman who has a big business, national business, and he said that he's no longer investing in Illinois. All of his investments going to other states in the South and in the East Coast. He says, that's where I'm putting all my money, not here. I also met 2 different large commercial real estate developers, and they both told me that they had redlined Chicago. They will not put a penny in Chicago. And that's the kind of mentality right now that's across our country when they think about Illinois, when they think about Chicago, hands off. And that means we can't create jobs, we can't grow wages, we have less opportunity, our population shrinking. All that stuff is added up because Democrats have implemented so many bad policies that people aren't coming here anymore. They're leaving. Companies are leaving. The headquarters are leaving. So pensions is one of those big things. And so, look, it becomes very easy. The first step and the obvious step, move to 401ks for all new employees starting tomorrow. It's constitutional. It's legal. It's what 401ks is what everybody else gets in the private sector. Just do that. And the reason I say that is it would send a signal to the rest of the country that we're finally making change, that we're finally stopping digging the hole. End pensions, stop digging a hole.
Ted Dabrowski chatted with him, I said Friday, talked with him, I believe, on Thursday, but we also talked about public safety, no cash bail, the SAFETY Act, immigration policies. What does Dabrowski campaign look like?
We got to bring up the morale of our police tremendously. If we don't bring up their morale, we'll never get public safety going again. And so back the blue, support them all the way. Take the handcuffs off the policemen and put them on the criminals. That's number 1. Number 2, though, is you have to get rid of the SAFETY Act. Just get rid of it entirely. If there's anything that's good in the SAFETY Act, we can bring that back on, but otherwise, get rid of it. Get rid of sanctuary state, sanctuary city. Now, I'm saying all these things knowing that I can't do this alone. Obviously, I need a legislature to do it, but I would use everything in my power to persuade, to negotiate, to bring back law and order, because we should not continue to be Chicago should not continue to be the city that leads the nation in murders every single year. That should not happen, and we should get tough. And remember, we have to remember the victims. 85 to 90% of the victims in Illinois are black or brown. So I want to move to where we defend the victims and not the criminals. So you would see a dramatic change in policy if I were governor.
Again, finally, some of the questions that we have, we're going to ask other Republican candidates. But Dabrowski, how do you reverse Illinois' population decline? Something we've seen congresspeople lose seats because we're shrinking in the state of Illinois. How do you reverse that and make Illinois a growing state? Here's Dabrowski.
Greg, I'm sorry, but you broke up a couple times. So I missed the actual
And again,
question.
This was live tape to Ted as we're playing it back here. And my questions
I think the rest of the
to
country
him about
and all of
population
its
decline.
residents, in Illinois, they need to know that we've switched things. This is a change election. No doubt this is a change election. If you want the continuation of high property taxes, high gas taxes, a corrupt government, no law and order, support for illegal immigration, then you vote for Pritzker. Just keep doing the same thing. But if you want to flip all those things and get back to some normalcy and we take back control of our own state, and make it a great state again, then you got to change your vote and vote for Ted Dabrowski. Now, you have to do something like the 401k, right, to show the rest of the world that we're switching. We're not going to keep coming after them for with all these big debts because we've changed our system. We have to change the law and orders we talked about. You have to make schools competitive again. And we haven't talked about school choice, but a key platform is allowing children and parents to get out of these failing schools. There's way too many schools where hardly anybody reads anymore. We have to create an environment where parents have a choice. We empower parents. But if you start doing all those things, and actually you freeze property taxes, then you start bringing them down. You start cutting all the waste. That's how you have to do this. And I might add, Greg, that on day one, what I would do is create a department that would expose where all the money is going, because nobody knows where the money is going today. Breakthrough Ideas has done a great job of exposing how $1 billion are going to NGOs. All that stuff needs to be reported on, clarified, stopped, and let people have some room to breathe. Let them keep some of their own money. We have to totally flip what Governor Pritzker has done. He's had 7 years to fix these problems, and he's done nothing.
Again, that's Ted Dabrowski, conversation I had with him last week, and how we go about seeing this play out in the March primary.
Yeah, Greg, I'll tell you one of the most satisfying things, gratifying things is that I'm being asked to come all over the state. I've been traveling like crazy, and it's by invitation. People are inviting us to talk, and they're so happy to hear somebody who wants to do the opposite of what Governor Pritzker is doing. They don't want these continued property tax hikes. And I'm talking about not just around here, but Southern Illinois as well, where the property taxes are killing them. They don't want this DEI in their schools. They don't want their kids being taught about transgenderism in the 4th grade. They want normalcy, and they want jobs again, and they want respect. And many people, especially in Central and Southern Illinois, feel like they're disenfranchised. That everything's being run for Chicago. People want to be heard, they want to be felt, and they want to know that somebody wants to do something different. And this is a change election, and I think this is the real opportunity. Governor Pritzker hasn't fixed anything. Everything is worse under Governor Pritzker. This is a chance to put him out of office and put somebody like me in and change it and get our great state back again. We can do better.
Again, Dabrowski's one of multiple candidates running for the Republican nomination on the March 17th primary ballots. Still got some petitioning objections that need to be clarified and whatnot, but we'll get an official list of who is going to be the Republican candidates, and we're going to be doing our best to talk with them here with the Center Square. You can definitely tell it's a holiday week as the news is somewhat slow, but still we got plenty to tackle. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and just a programming note, going to be off Thursday to celebrate Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're able to get away a bit and enjoy time with family and friends and lots of food and drink. But I'm also going to take Friday off as well, just because I might have that turkey hangover. So programming notes. All right, tomorrow we'll have a live program for you to wrap up the week. But don't forget, here with Illinois in Focus, we'll still get you the weekend edition as well. So Jim Talamonte and I, we plan on getting that put together before the holiday. That way you've got something else that'll keep you informed about things that we don't necessarily tackle each and every weekday here with Illinois in Focus Daily. So the weekend edition, you'll get that with the podcast here on YouTube or anywhere you get the podcast. And I also want to remind people, too, we do stream this live show each and every weekday morning at around 8 o'clock. And it's something that you can wake up to, come in, check out, catch a couple of moments, and then duck out and come back and get the segments later if you need to, but you can get the podcast as well. But go to the website, thecentersquare.com, where you can get the latest headlines in your inbox simply by signing up for the newsletter. It's a free newswire service. You can see here you've got national headlines about the Supreme Court ruling next year that could reshape transgender rights beyond sports. You've got discussion about travel with the FAA and Thanksgiving traveling across the country. Also, a lot of action in the courts, and that's something we're actually going to be talking about today when it comes to different types of things happening in courts where Donald Trump's involved, including updates on the state's migrant sanctuary policies being challenged by the Trump administration, but also the state of Illinois challenging the Trump administration's use of the National Guard. A few things that we'll tackle here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Again, go to the website, thecentersquare.com. Get the headlines in your inbox, but wake up with us here with Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning. I'm Greg Bishop, editor of Illinois at thecentersquare.com.
They were telling troops. They were telling troops, follow the law. And who's responding negatively to that? The 34-time convicted felon in the White House.
It's Governor J.B. Pritzker last week being asked about comments that President Donald Trump made on social media in response to Democrats who are in Congress and also members of the military at one point are saying that troops should not follow unlawful orders. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and all of this seems to focus around the use of the National Guard and going against migrant sanctuary policies and seeming to have the Trump administration step back from all of that. Not sure exactly the motive here, but you've seen all the national headlines about this and the back and forth about, the use of the word sedition and punishable by death, and the president putting that out there after this video circulated from some members of Congress urging the members of the military to, I guess, question orders that they receive from higher ups, including the commander-in-chief. Where are we at in all of this? Well, aside from the rhetoric, aside from the ongoing back and forth with, the President of the United States and Democrat members of Congress and even Governor J.B. Pritzker, as you heard there, he was asked last week about this. We're not going to necessarily delve into all of that. We're going to look at the courts and where the, third branch of government, right? You got the legislative, it's Congress. You got the executive, it's the president. And then you've got the judiciary, which is the court, the judicial branch. So a lot of things being hashed out in court and nothing has been settled yet when it comes to the use of the Guard. And as of right now, the Trump administration is not deploying the Guard in Illinois. That has been blocked for the moment as the case goes through the courts, and we'll take a look at some of this here in a moment. But real quick on the rhetoric, Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about this last week when he was asked by a reporter about comments that the president made on social media in response to Democrats urging members of the military to not follow unlawful orders.
Well, remember what they were asking. They were telling troops, follow the law. And who's responding negatively to that? The 34-time convicted felon in the White House. And so when he attacks people, it's often because he knows that what he is doing is wrong. And so he wants to make it seem like someone who is saying something negative about him is the wrongdoer. He's the one. And he says these things because he wants to deflect from what he's often asked people to do in government, people who are serving the public to do, which is to do things that are illegal. We saw that time and time again, and frankly, you still see it in the city of Chicago with ICE and CBP. And so that's the kind of thing that certainly people who have served their country, veterans that are serving now in Congress, have an absolute right. And these are decent, honorable people. They have an absolute right to stand up and say to everyone, follow the law. That's all they were saying to the troops of the United States.
And again, you've got the implication there that things that Donald Trump is ordering officials to do is illegal. Well, it's being challenged in the courts. Whether or not it's illegal, the final determination hasn't been made. A lot of this, especially when it comes to enforcement of federal immigration law, still very much being debated, again, in the courts, as you've got a case against the use of force still making its way through the courts. You've got a case concerning the use of the National Guard. That is pending now in the appeals court and even heading to the U.S. Supreme Court on preliminary grounds. You've got the ongoing issue of the state's migrant sanctuary policies and how that's being responded to by the state, with the U.S. challenging that. So you've got a whole host of things we're going to tackle here as we pull up some court documents. And in particular, let's go ahead and take a look at one in which the state of Illinois being sued by the federal government, now in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Let's pull this up, where you've got the federal government essentially laying out their case, saying that the docketing statement here, the U.S. United States filed the action in the district courts in the Eastern Division of Illinois, Northern District, Eastern Division, naming as defendant state of Illinois J.B. Pritzker in his official capacity as governor, the city of Chicago in his capacity of mayor, Brandon Johnson, Larry Snelling as police superintendent, Cook County defendants as well, and the sheriff of Cook County. So this is the sanctuary state challenge, right, where Illinois has laws in place that says state and local police cannot cooperate with federal law enforcement when it comes to immigration enforcement. So we'll go ahead and read through this. Although the district court had statutory jurisdiction over the United States claims, it lacked Article 3 jurisdiction over its claims against the county defendants. Though the United States is a sovereign entity, Article 3's rules apply in all cases regarding the plaintiffs. And while the United States believes that the county's ordinance is valid under the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, the Supreme Court has made clear that any litigant who invokes the power of judicial review must be able to show not only that the statute is invalid, but that he sustained or is immediately in danger of sustaining some direct injury as a result of its enforcement. Goes on, and this is a 9-page filing. They discuss a case in particular that invokes the judicial power to determine the validity of executive or legislative action. They must show that he sustained or is immediately in danger of sustaining direct injury. This remains true even when, as here, the plaintiff is a governmental entity asserting interference with its sovereign regulatory authority. Such plaintiffs still must point to imminent acts by the defendants that would tangibly interfere with that authority. Goes on to talk about another case, more case law. So here you've got the defendant's response to the state when it comes to the sanctuary policies. Continuing on, it says that the United States request for declaratory relief is not an independent source of federal jurisdiction or legalese. Rather, a court looks to the nature of the threatened action in the absence of the declaratory judgment suit to determine whether jurisdiction exists. So again, we're getting mired here in jurisdiction and questions about whether somebody has been harmed. And again, you've got the ongoing cases when it comes to the state's migrant sanctuary policies. The most recent filing is showing that, the granting extensions for time. So to file more filings. So the sanctuary state policies in Illinois being challenged by the federal government, mired in court. So how can you say one's legal and one's not, or following illegal orders or not following illegal orders, or giving illegal orders? The judiciary is there for that purpose. Now, at the same time, all of this is going on, challenging the state's migrant sanctuary policies, and we'll do what we can to, get out the flow chart of how this case is playing out in the courts, right? We've done a lot when it comes to the challenge against Illinois' gun and magazine ban of finding out where it's going, the trajectory of these cases. But obviously, this is a more complex issue when it comes to the federal government's use of force and enforcing federal immigration law, and the state not cooperating with that. And you see what happens on the streets outside of Broadview, and the clashes between police and protesters, with some pointing fingers saying that Democrats are encouraging these street clashes, and the Trump administration wanting to bring in the National Guard to defend those federal employees enforcing federal immigration law and the property there, like in Broadview. Now, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, she visited the Broadview facility and had this to say to members of the media shortly after visiting that facility. Here she is talking with a post she made on X.
What's called the ranking member on the House Homeland Security Subcommittee. What that means is that I'm the senior most Democrat in charge of funding the Department of Homeland Security. And so in my oversight capacity, I came to visit the Broadview processing facility today. We've been trying for months to get in. I just want to start there. What I saw, there were no detainees present. The ICE leadership that we met with said that they were updating their security systems, and so all detainees and staff were not present. We saw all of the holding cells. The largest, I would say, has probably 45 chairs, and then each holding cell had a toilet. The toilet was not in any way anything that any of us would be comfortable using, certainly not in an area that is open to others. They had signage in English and Spanish saying that detainees could use a shower at least every other day upon request. They said that detainees were fed meals of Subway or food from Walmart. They do not have a food vendor. There's no one providing medical care. They had one package of Huggies. They had some sanitary pads for menstruating women, and they had foot powder. It does not meet what I would consider to be the minimum criteria for a detention cell. And the staff people from ICE were clear with us that they are under no legal obligation to meet those criteria, because this is not a detention facility. This is a processing facility. The way that immigrants and U.S. citizens have been treated here is unacceptable. And, it doesn't make us more safe.
And I think here's where you can start to see where the rhetoric versus the reality can kind of just clash, right? While the U.S. government is suing the state of Illinois, trying to say your migrant sanctuary policies are hindering our efforts to enforce federal immigration law, and that's mired in the courts. They're still dealing with all of that in the district and the appeals court and so on. You've got a member of Congress going to a processing facility, not a detention facility, a processing facility in Illinois outside Chicago in Broadview, and saying it's not the place to detain people. Well, it's not the place they're detaining people. It's a processing facility. She said in another video that there weren't any detainees there when she went to go visit. Again, a processing facility. Illinois does not allow for the detention facilities that ICE needs in a jurisdiction to not just hold individuals, but prepare them for either deportation or beyond. It's not a processing facility; it's a detention facility. And the Way Forward Act that Illinois passed, which was after the Trust Act, again, migrant sanctuary policies prohibiting local state law enforcement from cooperating with federal law enforcement. The Way Forward Act also took away the ability for county jails to offer their jail beds to ICE to detain or to house detainees in the processing process. So she says that, this is not the way it should be. But in Illinois, they've kind of, the policies seem to have made it difficult to have this deportation process after a detainer is issued to go and grab somebody here illegally and then go through the legal process to do that. So interesting to see that criticism from Congresswoman Underwood. But continuing on now, all of this while again focused on the Broadview with Lauren Underwood visiting that. The Congresswoman saying that she didn't like the conditions she saw there as a processing facility. I think they have to go to Indiana for a detention facility, but regardless, that storyline obviously getting some headlines. While you've also got the clashes that we've seen on the streets outside the Broadview facility, clashes with federal law enforcement, and then all of a sudden state police and local police got involved and set up some protest perimeters, and they've had to modify those multiple times. And now all I'm seeing is videos of Illinois State Police grappling with protesters. So police are working to keep the streets safe around the Broadview facility. But, President Donald Trump had ordered the National Guard to go into Illinois, and last month that was blocked by a district court. Well, all of that now, at least on preliminary grounds, all of that now is in front of the U.S. Supreme Court with a question from the Trump administration to address this issue. And you've got the docket from the U.S. Supreme Court not showing yet that it's been put to conference, but a lot of briefing has been had over the past month and almost 2 months now, as you've got the applications referred to the courts. You've got Justice Barrett, the one that's going to possibly handle this in conference, and the various other briefs that have been filed. But all of this, while that goes on, the district court is continuing on with some of their policies and procedures to have this case move forward, including even late last week, papers were filed by Kristi Noem, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, all about the use of the guard. And I want to see if I can pull this up here so we can just take a look at the state of Illinois versus Donald Trump and others. This is an order that was issued by the district court, I believe. And here we've got, this is from last month, just kind of spelling out the plaintiffs and the defendants' positions and the use of the National Guard, and the Texas National Guard was also deployed, but going through and arguing that they're going to put a temporary hold on all of this. And that's why it's in front of the U.S. Supreme Court now, this temporary hold. So a lot of stuff here, a lot of legalese, a lot of corners and mazes to go through with multiple cases. And this stuff, by the way, is just the cases around immigration enforcement and the use of the guard. This doesn't deal with whether or not the Trump administration can dismantle federal agencies. There's lawsuits around that. There were lawsuits around SNAP benefits, lawsuits around the diversity, equity, and inclusion executive orders. There are just dozens and dozens and dozens of lawsuits that have been filed back and forth between the Trump administration and various states, including Illinois. And it can be quite Kafkaesque, I think is the proper use of that word. All right. We'll do what we can to make sense of it all for you, and that's what we do at thecentersquare.com. So get to the headlines and register for that newsletter, and that way you can wake up with not just stuff from Illinois, but again, you look at federal courts, a national headline here, blocking Trump from dismantling 4 agencies. You can read up on that and so much more. All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. Again, programming note, we are going to be off on Thursday for the Thanksgiving holiday, and we're also going to take Friday off so I can get out of that turkey hangover I'm likely going to induce upon myself Thursday. So greatly appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning and bring you the latest here. All right. That was a rough one. I mean, you got so many just twists and turns, and it's in this court, it's in that court, and under which cup hides the ball. Regardless, I think it's important to just understand where these cases are in the broader context of the rhetoric that's being used politically. Sometimes you just got to push that aside and just look at, okay, well, where are we at with the courts? The courts are the ones that are going to make the ultimate determination, either all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, how that all plays out. On the heels of debates about reviving the progressive income tax, and even former Governor Pat Quinn proposing a 3% surcharge on millionaires. Even though Illinois voters in 2020 voted down a proposed constitutional amendment to change the state's income tax. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning here as we break things down for you to understand so you can get on with your day. And of course, programming note, I'm going to be off Thanksgiving and off Black Friday. We'll be back live with this show come Monday, so we got stuff already lining up to keep you informed. So be sure to come back to us Monday morning, and we'll have fresh stuff for you. No leftovers, I promise. So let's get into this. Last week, we heard from Governor Pat Quinn, former Illinois governor. He is pushing a 3% surcharge on millionaires for property tax relief. There was a non-binding resolution that was approved by voters in the 2024 election. And now Quinn is looking to get a binding proposed change to the Constitution of the state of Illinois to have a 3% surcharge. Now, this would be different than the progressive tax that voters shot down back in 2020, and that was a question that Governor J.B. Pritzker supported. I mean, he put millions of dollars behind this and went further to discuss the issue of how to change the state's flat income tax to a progressive one. But there was also some talk recently in a debate with some progressives, and they said that they need to bring back the progressive income tax. Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about this, but also people criticizing the governor for being opposed to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's head tax for the next budget for the city. Pritzker said that he's foursquare opposed to that punishes job creators. But when it comes to the possibility of changing the state's income tax, he still supports that idea.
I was not raising it to him because it's specifically something that I'm going to propose in the 26th. I mean, by the way, the governor is not the one who ultimately proposes those bills or even signs them, right? When it's an amendment to the Constitution, the governor really has almost nothing to do with it other than perhaps advocacy. What I was saying in response to the alderman was, because he was making the claim that somehow that I'm not in favor of large corporations or wealthy people paying their fair share, I think is what he was saying. And that's ludicrous. The very first thing that I did, or one of the very first things that I did in office, was propose and ask the General Assembly to put on the ballot the amendment that would have a graduated income tax in the state. It didn't pass with the voters. But as you know, I worked hard. I put resources behind it more than anybody's ever done before. So one cannot claim that I am not in favor of a more progressive rather than regressive tax system. And that's what I was trying to say to him when he was saying that being against the head tax in the city of Chicago is somehow my opposition to having wealthier people pay more and middle-class people pay less. So all I can say is I believe that we need to have a system that is more progressive and less regressive than the one that we have now. I think it's something that is being talked about by members of the General Assembly. We'll have to see if it gets proposed. It's not something that's been a priority for me going into the next session. We clearly want to make sure first that we are looking at finding efficiencies in government. That's always the very, very first thing. But I do think a graduated system is better than a flat tax system. And so if there's a possibility for us to have a system like that, it's better than the one we have.
The governor saying that he proposes or prefers a graduated system over a flat tax system. And just for clarity, people understand, the federal tax code, the federal income tax, is a progressive tax. The more money you make, the higher rates you pay. Illinois is a flat income tax state, right? So it doesn't matter how much you make, you pay the same rate, not the same amount, the same rate as everybody. And actually, some policy analysts, like from the Tax Foundation, I believe, they say that that's flat tax is one of the saving graces for Illinois. But there's already a movement to change that. And if you go to ilga.gov, you'll be able to see Senate Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 4 that was filed by State Senator Robert Martwick, and you've got several others that are signing on board with that. And what it would do, it proposes to amend the state constitution's revenue article, removing a provision that provides that a tax on income shall be measured at a non-graduated rate, and provides that the General Assembly shall provide by law for the rates of any tax on measured by income imposed by the state. Currently, they may be no more than one such tax imposed by the state on individuals and one such tax imposed on corporations. So this would be the constitutional amendment. Now, it would have to pass the House and the Senate by 3/5 majority. Does not go to the governor. If the House passes it and the Senate passes it, it just goes to the ballot for people to vote on. And again, this happened back in 2020, and voters disapproved of that constitutional amendment. But it's not just this idea. You've also got the other idea that former Governor Pat Quinn proposed, and that was a surcharge on millionaires. And you've got that article being filed, and this coming from the House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 21 from State Representative Natalie Manley. And what that does is it proposes to amend the revenue article of the Illinois Constitution, provides an additional income tax shall be imposed on individuals in an amount equal to 3% of the portion of the individual's net income that is greater than $1 million, provides that of the revenue collected, 50% shall be used for property tax relief and 50% distributed to school districts solely on a per pupil basis. And this is an effort to provide some kind of property tax relief. Does it really address the main drivers of Illinois having the highest property taxes? There's a lot of argument there, no question. But listen, there's all kinds of different resolutions that are filed, and you can actually go to the Illinois General Assembly website and find those. And in particular, look for, Senate Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendments. There's 7 of them. You've also got House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendments. There's 22 of them. And some of the topics, term limits. Somebody filed a term limits bill. Parental rights, having that as a constitutional amendment. Different types of things there, voting qualifications and such. And then you look at some of the House constitutional amendments. Bill of Rights, carrying firearms. And these are some that aren't going anywhere. You can imagine, legislative redistricting, constitutional amendments, amendments about balanced budgets. So this would be worth looking at as to what some of the options are for constitutional amendments. But will the prospect of a progressive revenue tax be the one that advances? Where's the constitutional amendment being proposed to address the state's pension crisis? Maybe saying, hey, we can diminish some of the benefits because it's just too expensive. Should voters be asked about that? Finally get that on the table. What about, term limits, for instance, or the redistricting commission, to have an independent commission tackle redistricting instead of having politicians do the redistricting every 10 years. So clearly there's ongoing conversation about all of this, and the Technology and Manufacturing Association put out this statement yesterday after all of this talk, and we'll just read through this together. At a recent candidate forum, the 4 top Democrat candidates for comptroller announced their support for reviving a state constitutional amendment to impose a progressive income tax in Illinois, the same progressive tax manufacturers and small businesses fought against and Illinoisans rejected in 2020. The call from Democrat candidates comes in the heels of Governor Pritzker's announcement a week earlier that Illinois needs a progressive income tax, and is a reflection of the Democrats' priorities. On top of supporting a progressive tax, each of the candidates also claimed the $55 billion budget that Springfield passed for 2026 did not spend enough or include enough tax hikes. Small and mid-sized manufacturers questioned when the damage being placed on our working families and businesses will end. Here's a quote from TMA's Executive Vice President Dennis Lacombe. The rhetoric to revive a progressive tax is not only reckless but dangerous. Prospective businesses will hear and void Illinois. Struggling working families will no longer be able to afford to live here and move elsewhere. And manufacturers and businesses looking to expand in this state will have to account for added taxes. It goes on to say, hasn't Springfield done enough damage already? From the unaffordable energy and transit bills that were passed in veto session to decoupling from federal tax cuts that would put more money back in the hands of our manufacturers, the policies coming out of Springfield continue to stifle economic growth and hurt those needing support most. Small and mid-sized manufacturers are already struggling to keep up. A progressive tax would be backbreaking. It goes on to say that TMA was part of the campaign to oppose the progressive tax, and it's after Governor J.B. Pritzker, they say, spent nearly $60 million in order to promote it, but that $60 million didn't get it across the threshold for it to become a constitutional amendment. You've got Lacombe continuing saying it's time to put this path toward a progressive tax to bed instead of wasting time and money and resources to sell a failed product to voters rejected. Let's come together and come up with real common sense solutions that balance our budget, ease the burden on working families, creates an environment in Illinois where small businesses and their employees can thrive and prosper. So that's the statement released yesterday by the Technology and Manufacturers Association opposing a progressive tax. And as they said there, why don't we come together for common sense solutions that balance the budget and make a more friendly business climate? And you had the governor not long ago say, we do need to have revenue growth by economic growth. And he says that he's a capitalist, but he's passed and enacted a slew of tax increases practically every year since he came into office in 2019 and continues to spend more and more and more. The governor has spent $16 billion annually more since coming into office, 40+% increase in spending, right? I mean, it was like $38 billion when the governor came into office. Now we're spending $55 billion plus, and the tax revenue continues to increase. But the governor, he says, listen, he's more focused on efficiencies in the state's budget.
Well, as you know, we don't pass a new budget until, well, sometime in the spring. It's quite a difficult endeavor to find $200, $300, $400 million of cuts, let alone, more if we need to. And so trying to get each agency to find that much within their budget for the coming year and how they would ramp down a program that is currently running, or how they might find efficiencies to continue to run a program as well as it was with less money. Those are all difficult things, and so that's why it takes longer than I know there are Republicans who have demanded to see what does that look like. The reality is that it takes some time for our agencies to come up with those ideas, and it's a discussion more than it is some kind of report on which we're all going to vote.
So the governor saying that, listen, that executive order he put out last month saying find 4% efficiencies in the state's budget, there's not going to be a report necessarily. It's going to be voted on, he says. He's just telling them to tighten the belt as we head into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We'll, of course, continue to monitor what happens. It's still early in the election process, but any constitutional amendment that's proposed has to get approved by the General Assembly by early May in order for there to be enough time to vet it and get it onto the ballot for November. But before all of that, we've got a March primary election with tons to tackle there. So, obviously, keep it with the Center Square, and we'll keep you posted. It is Illinois in Focus Daily with you each and every weekday morning here with the Center Square.